Welcome to the Simply His Coffee Shop. We're so glad that you're joining us today. We are going to be doing a two-part series on St. Patrick's Day since this is March and it's getting ready to come up, and he was such a fascinating guy. And I'm joined again in the studio with Mom, Nita Horn, and Charisse.
Hey.
So we're going to just dive right in. St. Patrick, he was an incredible person, and I think a lot of people, because it's when you go to the store, you know, it's big Valentine's Day. Well, not even as much anymore. It's become almost one of those like squeak by holidays almost, because you have all of the Valentine's Day stuff and it's like aisles and aisles and aisles. And then it comes up St. Patrick's Day gets this like little tiny end cap, basically, and then you get Easter. And so it's like this little in-between one. But if you actually research who St. Patrick was and what his story is, why are we not spending more time on St. Patrick's Day?
Right, exactly.
And learning about who he was and what he stood for. And that might be why now it's become more of the end cap holiday.
Maybe and more so of, you know, like the big leprechauns and the big beer mugs, because everybody's going to do their pub crawl, and it's like that's not how this started.
That is not who he was, or what
not
he
even
was
close.
About. At all, period.
No.
So tell us a little bit about who St. Patrick was.
So St. Patrick, and I'm going to be reading a lot today because there's so much about him that's not, you know, just committed to memory.
It's too much to
it really is, but it's
memorize.
so good. I don't want to miss something. You
Right.
know?
No, it's all good.
Yeah. So St. Patrick was the patron saint of Ireland, and he's one of Christianity's most celebrated figures. His life and legacy are intertwined both in Christian history and Irish folklore. And there's a little brief overview that I've got, but in our discussion of pre-show, we talked about kind of like the type and shadow parallel of St. Patrick and Joseph in the Bible, right?
Absolutely. That was fascinating to me, to when we were kind of researching it and then reading your notes on it. I was like, this really, really reminds me of Joseph and his story of how he was sold into slavery and captivity, and then what he turned his life into.
Yes, he was a young man when he was kidnapped.
Yeah.
Very young.
Yeah.
16?
Yeah, he was
16.
16. St. Patrick was 16.
Yep.
Yeah, because he was born in Britain to a wealthy Christian family around the end of the 4th century A.D. at the age of 16. He was captured by Irish raiders and was taken to be a slave in Ireland. And during his captivity, he worked as a shepherd and turned to Christianity for strength and solace. So that goes right along with, you know, captivity and redemption with Joseph, how both him and Joseph were experienced in a period of captivity. While Joseph was sold into slavery by his family and taken to Egypt, you know, Patrick was captured and enslaved in Ireland, but in both cases they eventually rose to positions of power and influence in demonstrating God's resilience and providence in their life. So,
Well, and what I find interesting too is the immersion, basically. So like if you're wanting to learn another language, or you're wanting to learn another culture, what is the best and fastest way for you to learn that? It's by immersing yourself in that culture or in that language.
Right.
So you basically move there, and that's what a lot of missionaries actually do too. You know, they go there and they might attend a language school, but the fastest way for you to actually learn their culture, what they believe in, you know, their belief systems, what's their lore, what's their legacies of how
traditions.
Traditions and the language, is by immersing yourself in it, and that makes you be able to understand it so much faster.
you don't have the option.
Exactly. You really don't have the option.
Swim, you know, you're kicked out of the boat. So.
Absolutely. So you get thrown in the deep end, basically, to figure that out. So both Joseph and St. Patrick were immersed in this culture, whether they wanted to or not. So the fastest way they were able to learn about it was by that immersion.
Absolutely.
And what I find fascinating, too, is the fact that, especially with Joseph, his brothers didn't even recognize him.
Right.
What does that say? Because he had taken on so much of the cultural stuff that he was embedded in.
Ingrained in him.
And he didn't even look like himself anymore.
Right.
Plus he spoke the language so fluent.
Exactly.
They didn't pick up on that at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So was St. Patrick taken to this foreign land, an alien in this foreign land, put in a shepherd setting
Yep.
among the sheep, and with the culture of his grandfather being
A deacon, basically, in
that
their
was
church.
his dad, and then his dad was a bishop, I think. Or
Okay.
Grandpa was a bishop. But having all of that religious background,
Right.
here he is out in the middle of this field with a bunch of sheep doing this as a slave, and he turns to what he knows.
Yeah.
He goes back to his roots where he's praying to God,
Right.
trying to find, and if it were me, I'd be going, why am I here, God? What's going on?
Exactly.
I
Right.
don't understand what's happening in my life.
No, exactly.
Imagine what a 16-year-old boy would pray.
Oh, right.
And being at that very, very young age, you rely on your parents to be the spiritual
Yeah,
kind
absolutely.
of leaders.
Guidance.
But
right.
this guy, he's taken out, and now he don't have that covering.
Whatever he learned up to that point is what he's got
on
to
his
fall
own now.
back on.
Exactly. So he does. He falls back on and begins to immersing himself
yeah.
into what he was as a young child. This is why, as a parent, you need to make sure you get that in them.
Right.
Right.
Because this is what he fell back on when times got tough.
Exactly.
Right.
And so during those times of getting tough, he began to pray. And I would imagine probably stronger prayers than he's ever prayed in his
Oh,
life.
my gosh. Well, sure.
Life-sustaining prayers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Turning to God,
Yeah.
And up until this moment of him being kidnapped, he served God,
Right.
Sure.
his parents' God,
Right.
the God of Abraham, Isaac, but
Jacob,
then it
yeah.
becomes his God.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Personal.
Exactly.
A personal experience instead of just a knowledge.
Yes. And so that's where I think his journey really started to blossom.
Yeah.
Is because he found God as a shepherd in the middle of all of these sheep.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of David.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
King David when he's out singing the Psalms.
Right,
Because
right.
that's where he got his anointing. That's where he
Exactly.
met God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's
For
something
sure.
about just that moment of aloneness.
Yeah.
And also in a moment of desperation.
Very much so.
Or in a moment of unfamiliarity because you got nothing else.
Right.
You
Right.
turn to God.
What are you
so
going to do?
you, during those trials, turn to God because he's never not going to be there.
Absolutely.
So to me, that's one of my favorite parts. A very humble beginning.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to skim past that. He was
Sure.
kidnapped. He was in a field. Now he's a shepherd. But what happened to him personally?
Right.
Right. The development
God
from that.
met him on a personal level.
Absolutely.
And I love that about God because he always meets the individual person
Exactly.
on their level of
Right.
understanding.
Absolutely.
And I
Right.
love that.
Absolutely.
Well, and that's one thing that I always appreciated about one of my dad's philosophies to a degree was the fact that he always said, if you're truly seeking God, even the Psalms and the Proverbs talk
Right.
about that, if
Over
your
and over.
heart is in the right place, God will meet you where you're at. And, we've semi-talked about it before, but, even in your confusion or your anger or
Right.
your happiness, it's okay to semi-question God and say, God, why is this happening? David did it constantly.
Yeah, well-
It's about where is your heart?
Right.
Are you doing this because it's coming out of a flow of anger and hatred and all of those negative emotions, or is it coming out, God, I'm angry. Why is
Right.
this happening to me? What is going on? And I think, again, depending on where your heart is actually at and what your intentions are, it's okay to have those emotions.
Oh,
God put those
absolutely.
emotions
You have
in
to.
us.
If you've not argued with God,
Right.
hello? I mean, how many of us have not argued with God? Because there's been times in your life, when it's like, I've argued with him, because even Bruce talks about a time in his life when something happened to them. And he said, even in my failed state as a father, I'm going to Abba Father going, I wouldn't do this to my own kid. What are you doing to me? You know what I mean? But in that moment, it's a moment of relationship
Right.
and learning. And especially when it's in the rearview mirror of why you were going through that at that time. So, I mean, and maybe not arguing with God is the right term, but just even questioning, because questioning is,
Questioning, I think, is a better word.
it's like, this makes no sense, but,
Well, because we all have moments in life where we don't understand.
oh, for sure.
That's why you can't lean on what we understand.
Our own understanding.
It's so small and so tiny
Right.
compared to God's big picture of what the outcome. Speaking of,
Yeah.
Right.
this young
Oh,
man
my gosh,
being
right.
kidnapped, if he
Right,
was
pulled
in his
away
own
from his
understanding,
family.
Yeah.
that would be where that'd be the end of the story right there.
Right.
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 But he turned to God. He found God, and God begins to speak to him.
Yeah.
And he even tells him, you need to go back to your homeland,
Yeah.
which he did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, after he got to his homeland, God said, now go back
As a missionary.
as a missionary. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And let's take the story from there, Cherise.
We were talking about, his experience there about being captured and then while in captivity, having visitations or dreams similar to Joseph, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because once St. Patrick was in captivity, he had profound, what they call, for lack of a better term, a religious experience, which led him to a deepening of his faith. And he claimed to have had received visions from God urging him to try to escape the captivity and return to Britain. And after 6 years of captivity, he managed to escape and made his way back to his family.
Right.
Let me get back up to this. And despite, his ordeal in Ireland, Patrick felt a calling to return to the land as captors, like you were talking about, as a Christian missionary. After studying for the priesthood, he was ordained to be a bishop, and around 432 AD, he returned to Ireland to spread the Christian faith, confronting the Druidic practices and pagan beliefs of that day.
Well, and what's funny about that, too, because I was researching a little bit this morning before we did this, it actually took him 15 years of studying
Wow.
to become a bishop. And it said even though that he was very apprehensive still to go back. And that part of it kind of reminded me of Moses, like where he's like, I don't think I want to go.
Right.
I'm not confident in myself. But it said that once he got back to Ireland and started, he was fearless.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's normal for us as
fear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Christians to have that fear and trepidation of,
Especially
should I do
in
this?
ministry work or missionary work.
Exactly. Well, in the unknown, how are they going to receive
Right.
me? Are they going to receive the message? Or, and he was always in danger of being martyred,
Oh, sure,
with the Christian message. But I thought it was really interesting, though, too, that when he became a missionary to Ireland, because he had been immersed in their culture, he knew about their pagan rituals.
Exactly.
He knew about what they believed. And so he used that to his own advantage.
Right.
And he said, no, you can use this, but this is what it's good for. And this is how God saves us. And this is the shamrock.
Yeah.
He used that as the Trinity to explain the
Exactly.
Trinity. And so, I mean, using their own culture basically against them to a
Right.
degree, but to help spread that word, that just was really fascinating to me.
I think what I like is that he used the shamrock as an example because it was something that they were familiar with
Right.
and that they understood.
Yes.
And it would remind you as you're walking along a path going from village to village or
It's
house to house.
everywhere.
The Father, the
It's
Son,
everywhere.
the Holy Spirit. Yeah.
Yes, and they're everywhere. So how can you escape?
Miss that.
I mean,
Yeah.
to be in Ireland, you're going to see these little
Oh,
plants
yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
So God is everywhere. So there's so much more to that one little illustration, and that's only one of the ones we know of.
Right.
Well, even the Celtic cross, though, part of the reason the Celtic cross became such a thing was because of St. Patrick. He actually used the sun because they worshiped like a sun god type
Right.
thing. But he brought it in with the cross to be behind the cross to say, no, God created all of this. It was just a really interesting fact. You can go in and Google it and stuff,
Right.
but that's kind of how the Celtic cross even got
that I didn't
started, was
know.
because of St. Patrick. And the bonfires, he was using bonfires to bring people in too, because they used bonfires a lot in their pagan worship. And he flipped the switch again on bonfires to help solidify and promote the gospel of Christ.
That's
Using
right.
things they were familiar with.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I love that's true missionary work there.
It is,
right,
and it reminds
right.
me too, there was a missionary to Papua New Guinea, and it's called the Peace Child, and that story always fascinated me too, because they had a lot of cannibalistic type stuff and this tribe would fight this tribe, and it was just, they were always going after each other. But part of what the peace child was, when a tribe was trying to make peace with each other, they would basically trade a child for a child, a firstborn for a firstborn.
Wow.
And these missionaries were like sitting there going through this ritual with them, and they're like, oh, I know how to reach these people. Jesus was the ultimate peace child.
Right.
And so that helped them understand, because, again, they were immersed in this culture, trying, how am I going to tell these people about Jesus?
Serving it to them in a way that was palatable that
Exactly,
they could
so that
consume.
then they were able to say Jesus was the ultimate peace child. There's a book about it. Read it. It's an amazing book.
Yeah, it does. It does. St. Patrick is credited with numerous miracles during his time in Ireland, including the conversion of chieftains and the expulsion of snakes from Ireland, although the latter is likely metaphorical rather than literal. You know, from my readings, there was over 120 miracles that he had performed, attributed to him. Yeah, and I think, was it over 300 or 400 churches he established?
Well, it was somewhere between 300 and 700 churches.
There you go.
Where he was actually a part of the foundational launching.
Talk about
building, solidifying
Christian
churches. I think he was responsible for over 100,000 baptisms.
Oh my
That is
gosh.
a lot of people.
That is.
You just have to be doing lots of them every day.
Especially in a pagan culture.
Yeah.
You know.
What an amazing life that must have been.
Oh, right.
Well, I made 20,000 baptisms today.
Can you imagine?
Well, I don't know how many. That's just metaphorically a joke, but just saying, he was a busy guy. Very busy doing God's work.
Oh, for sure.
Spreading the good news of the gospel.
Absolutely.
To the people in Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about, a couple of his writings, one of which is the autobiographical confession, and then the letter to the soldiers of Coroticus, which he denounced the mistreatment of Irish Christians. And I think you've got some information on that.
I do. I printed it. It's like 21 points, too much to read.
Wow.
But I will read a little bit of the opener.
Yeah.
Because a little bit of the opener will give you just a little bit of a feel that the St. Patrick's did not serve a fluffy God.
Exactly.
He was real.
Right.
And he had sold out.
Yeah.
Right.
He was where the rubber meets the road kind of Christian.
Right.
I declare that I, Patrick, an unlearned sinner indeed. He just named me.
All in favor.
All of us already.
I
have been established a bishop in Ireland. I hold quite certainly that what I am, I have accepted from God.
Hello.
So he didn't self-appoint.
Right.
He understands that he is on a mission for God.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
Being on a mission from God, and you know that?
Oh, it's purpose.
That's why the work got
Great
done.
purpose.
Well, and it took him, again, 15 years to finish his training to even be able to go and speak to these people, or feeling like he was finally qualified to go back and speak to them.
Well, probably he was serving his family in the tradition that his grandfather and father had done, while fulfilling what God had, given him, the vision for him to do.
And he
to come
took
back.
that step of faith to fulfill his calling.
Absolutely.
He goes on to say, I live as an alien among non-Roman peoples, an exile on account of the love of God. It's the love of God that has sent him, that has compelled him to go witness to these people. He is my witness that this is so. It is not that I would choose to let anything so blunt and harsh come from my mouth, but I am driven by the zeal of God. And the truth of Christ stimulates me for love of neighbors and children. Do you not love that one?
Right.
Yeah.
For the love of neighbors and children. For these I have given up my homeland, my parents, and my very life to death. If I am worthy of that, I live for my God to teach these people, even if I am despised by some.
Wow.
That's his opening statement. There are 20 more points.
Right, that's a lot.
I would encourage you. We could, but it would take the next 3 or 4 weeks for us to get through. So I'll stop there and give these people out there that are listening some homework.
Right, no, for sure.
Now, this is a man that, again, as I was doing some research, I could not find anywhere that would tell me what day he was born.
I know.
Right.
So the amazing part about it is when you see the St. Patrick's being celebrated on March the 17th. You think that's his birthday.
It was the day of his death.
That was the day that he died, and that became the day they remembered him in honor of him and his life.
Yeah.
That was in honor of the legacy and the life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Not the birthing of.
Right.
But the...
Well, and technically, I was reading too that he has not actually been a canonized saint.
Right.
They basically just gave him an honorary title because of what he actually did. But because of when he actually did live, they didn't have a protocol of hoops that you had to jump through in order to get your actual sainthood. Right. I thought that was really interesting.
It is interesting, especially considering the gravity of what he did in Ireland in that day and that time. And we don't have any other days that are celebrated for any other type saints that the gravity of the work that they did. So it's like, did somebody miss something in the cracks? Did the memo get lost, So
very interesting.
Yeah,
it's very strange.
Christians, worldwide, celebrate March 17th to honor his contributions in Christianity in Ireland. And in Ireland, they have what they call the Feast Day celebration.
Oh, okay.
I looked up a couple of things just from a culinary perspective of what maybe traditionally they do. And I'm going to completely mispronounce everything that these are. So if you know the correct pronunciations, feel free to troll me. I'm sorry. So one of the things that I found was, and Ireland is synonymous with what? What do you think of vegetable-wise when you think about
potato?
Thank you, potatoes. So they have this potato bread, and it's called fadge. Fadge. Northern Ireland and parts of northern England make it from a combination of a grated raw and mashed cooked potato, and it's fried until crispy on the outside and creamy on the inside. They keep them warm and top them with sour cream. And it reminded me when we were talking about our pre-show notes, in the Lutheran Church, they have a celebration where they serve, I think it's lutefisk. It's a fish that's fermented.
Oh.
And then they have what's called lefse. And it's a potato, like pancake cut, but it's really thin, almost like a crepe. When Toby and I were in North Dakota, I could have gotten seriously addicted to lefse up there. Like if I ever go back to North Dakota, get me the lefse. We'll go during that period of time. It's really good. Sometimes they would serve it with butter, and sometimes with sugar and cinnamon, because you have sweet and you can have savory or whatever.
So you're talking about the potato part of it all?
Yeah, it's just like a potato bread, but it's so thin, almost a little thicker than a crepe. And the families up there have their own round cooker that this traditionally goes on, and then each family has wooden sticks, and they have some of them have their own crusts in them, and it's a Norwegian thing.
Okay.
And so they take the thing and flip it and do this, hibachi kind of thing with their potato pancake, and flip it. But it's traditional. It's passed down. Yeah. And the daughters get passed down the sticks from. So I wonder if there's something similar to that in Ireland.
Side note, you're talking about those little sticks?
Yeah.
I have one that I don't even know what they would have used it for. Now I know.
Oh, my gosh.
And it was given to me, I want to say, by one of the greats that somewhere along the line passed down to generations, and I ended up with it. It's a little wooden stick with an emblem on it. I never fully understood, but that gives me a place to go look now.
Absolutely. That's very cool. See if there's some Norwegian in your back.
Oh, yeah.
That's very cool.
The only part of it I knew was Norwegian, was that it was a Norwegian thing.
Wow.
So I'll have to... Now I have to go look and see.
I'll have to check that out now.
Look up what that the Lutheran ceremony is that they do. I can't remember what it is.
Let's hold our thoughts on the food, because I know we have some other food items that go along with St. Patrick's Day and everything, and we'll talk a little bit more about St. Patrick as well. But please join us again next week here in the Simply His Coffee Shop. We'll see you next time.